Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down. No touching. I don't do the touching. We're back to another week. Welcome to Monday's edition of the dceu Daily. In the main part of today's show, we'll be looking back yet again at the dceu, the content of the films, what we loved, what we didn't like, and I think most of us loved most of it, especially the kind of inception of the franchise, and just looking back at people's toxicity towards the early franchise and Zack Snyder, and just trying to get to the bottom of where this hatred came from that actually drove the man off the project, and that's the fact. But first today, I want to introduce you to someone from Twitter. I want to introduce you to Tom Zohar. He's loud and Jewish and gay. Do you know what, Tom? I'm Greek, loud and straight. Guess what, Tom? Congratulations. I'm happy that you're proud to be Jewish. I'm happy that you're proud to be gay. And I'm proud to be a straight Greek Cypriot. And this is what Tom had to say about Joaquin Phoenix. I'm so tired of men. Why is Tom so tired of men? Isn't Tom a man? Is he tired of himself? Let's investigate what he's quote tweeting. According to Todd Phillips on the New York Times, Joaquin Phoenix lost his composure on the set, sometimes to the bafflement of his co-stars. In the middle of the scene, he'll just walk away and walk out, Phillips said. And the poor other actors think it's them. And it was never them. It was always him. And he just wasn't feeling it. Phoenix might have walked off set, but he always returned after taking a breather. Phillips remembered Phoenix reassuring him after an especially tense moment, we'll take a walk and we'll come back and we'll do it. One person Phoenix was a consummate professional when they were on set together was Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro said Joaquin was very intense in what we was doing, as it should be, as he should be. De Niro said, there's nothing to talk about. Personally, on the side, let's have coffee. Let's just do the stuff. So this is what Tom is getting very, very upset about, because an actor who has a certain way of working needed a breather now and again. Let's face it. He gave, you haven't seen the film yet, most of you haven't, right? I have for a test screening. I keep on repeating myself, oh, still a test screening. I see a lot of test screenings, right? And it means a lot of air miles because I live in Cyprus. The test screenings don't happen here. I have to get a plane somewhere, and that's the way it is, and I have to come back on the same day. That's where it is. But basically, because people ask me, how do you get a test screening in Cyprus? Now you know. We don't. Anyway, right, so when you see this film, you will see that this actor has put in every piece of emotional aspect of art into this character. Of course he's going to need a breather. Todd Phillips didn't say he stormed out. He just needed to take time out. Sometimes he'd go for a walk with Todd. The point is, Joaquin is a very unique guy. He's very different, and maybe that's difficult for some actors to take, but that's his style. What I see with his relationship with Todd Phillips, I think that he's found someone he actually looks up to and respects. And I notice on the red carpets, if Todd isn't there, he looks a bit lost in the pictures and stuff. I think Todd's become a bit of a father figure to him, a brother. And it's a beautiful thing. And what I want to like to see, because I think Joaquin has suffered with alcoholism, drug abuse, and certain elements of mental health issues himself. He hasn't had an easy life, and I would just hate these attacks to affect his mental health. So I hope that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, Access Media, SJWs, you can put yourselves responsible for that, because the talk towards that has been absolutely disgusting. Joaquin Phoenix, I love you. I love your performance. The Joker movie is going to make $1 billion, and that's how we hurt these people. Even more DC World of Movie news now. We are finally going to get a Birds of Prey, The Emancipation of One Harley Quinn trailer. A trailer, maybe on Thursday, maybe before, but it's looking like Thursday. It might be just before New York Comic Con as well. So that's very exciting. And Warner Brothers are making a big effort for Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey. And they're doing lots of Funko Pops at the New York Comic Con. They're going to be there, which is interesting. because the release, the Snyder Cut platform is going to be there. The movement is going to be there as well. A big digital billboard flashing on and off. I can't remember what it's going to say. So if I can't get myself down there, that's one plane trip I can't go to and come back again, right? But yes, I'm looking forward to find out what happened. And the best place to find out what happened is Ping Pong Flicks. Ping Pong Flicks, Chris Wong Svensson has got a YouTube channel. The channel's called Ping Pong Flicks. He's awesome. He goes into so much more detail than I ever do. I forget half the shit that happens before I do a video, and I don't write it down and I don't remember it. So I apologise for that. I'm driving you away from my blimming channel, ain't I, and sending you over to Chris. But look, no, I always kind of shout out people who deserve it. I mean, he doesn't need my help. He's got thousands and thousands of subscribers, and good luck to him. But he's amazing. And if you really want more detail than you get here, because I've got so many things to talk about here, it's not just about news for me. It's about movies of the past. It's just talking about DC in general. And, of course, mainly about the DCEU. So check out Ping Pong Flicks for more detail of what's happening within the DCEU and the DC world of films. Now, we are going to take a step back to 2013. Or let's go back before then. 2011 saw the announcement that Smallville would end. What's Smallville got to do with this? Mick, you do Smallville, the Saviour of Superman after this video. Talk about it then. No. Listen up. Smallville was announced to finish in 2011, which it did. Now, soon after Smallville finished, around 2012, right, we had the announcement that Christopher Nolan had been appointed in a Godfather role to do a Superman movie, which we didn't know at that time was still called Superman Man of Steel, because that was Bryan Singer's sequel to Superman Returns. So we were all very excited. I remember the evening I heard this. I was buzzing. Oh my God. And I assumed, you had things on in your head. Oh my God, Christopher Nolan's going to write and direct a Superman movie. But then he wasn't. And then we heard that he brought on Zack Snyder to direct, and he and David S. Goyer were going to write the story. And David would do the screenplay. I was excited about that. I obviously love the Dark Knight trilogy. Batman Begins is not just one of my favourite CBMs, it's one of my favourite films of all time. I thought this was brilliant. And Chris was going to be a Godfather role, and they said they were going to... The Man of Steel was the beginning. The Man of Steel movie was the beginning of a DC franchise, the birth of the DCEU, the infamous DCEU that everyone just can't shut up about, whether you hate it, or you love it, or you're indifferent about it. So let's go back. Now, I'd never actually heard of Zack Snyder. Now, I'll tell you a funny story. I'd actually watched Watchmen and 300, and I loved those films, but I didn't know who the hell directed them. I remember when he was announced, and a lot of the fandom went ballistic. We don't want Zack Snyder. Look what he did with Watchmen. And I was like, what did he do with Watchmen? Obviously, granted, Watchmen comic book fans, I've never read a comic. So if you have, and you feel he ruined the movie and the adaptation, that is your absolute right. I love what Zack Snyder did with Man of Steel and BVS, and I always will. But everyone has a right to come from their own perspectives and points of view. And people coming from knowledge from the comics obviously have a right to say, well, this guy didn't really do what he should have done. But calling him a hack and, hurtful names isn't very constructive. And I never call directors' names or creatives' names. And it's actually interesting yesterday because I can't remember who it was. I think it's someone who works on DC Animation talked about toxic fandom. And I made a very good point here. Because I'm a creative. I'm a creative here in Cyprus. I'm developing the first English-speaking dramas for Sigma TV here on Cypriot TV. And this is my opinion. If you're making something, now I don't get paid a lot of money to do this, of course. I'm small time. But if you're paid millions of dollars, if you stand to make millions of dollars by creating something, your consumer has every right to tell you, do you know what? I love that. Do you know what? I didn't like that. And Alpha Vita Sigma, that's the reason I didn't like it. That's not toxic fandom. Now, toxic fandom should be when they insult people, but everything is toxicity to these people. But it's all right when an actor from the MCU starts insulting Man of Steel. And of course, we go back. There was a reaction to Man of Steel. I remember seeing the trailers and thinking, Jesus Christ, how is it possible for this film to be as good? I'm thinking, calm down, Mick. These are trailers. It could be absolutely ordinary, like Superman Returns, because when I saw Superman Returns, I loved it. I was just sucked in by John Williams' theme and that they were continuing from Superman 2. And there were elements of Superman Returns that were awesome. But there were also very ordinary, mediocre elements of Superman Returns. So a lot of that film worked and a lot of that film didn't work. So I didn't know what we were going to get. But the trailers, Henry looked amazing. I liked the costume. I still think with all those comic book costumes that Superman deserves to wear the costumes from the comic book. But no issues with the costume. I mean, it's a little dark. It's a little dark, let's be honest. But look, I ain't got a real issue with that. But I prefer it to be lighter, but it's not a dead issue for me. So I love the costume. Henry looked great. The trailers, every TV spot you just got, and you're just thinking, blimey hell, this is going to be amazing. Absolutely amazing. I saw this film about 3 to 5 times in the cinema. I was obsessed with this film. I loved it. I loved the emotional element to it, but I loved how visually stunning Superman looks, how the effects just look natural. Everything looked natural. When all those buildings are falling in Metropolis, when the World Engine starts doing its thing, and you got Perry White running away, and you could see them falling. It's so real. It's so amazing. And even now, those effects stand up. We talk about, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You're talking about 6 years ago. And effects move on very quickly in the industry now. And I mean, special effects people tell me that all the time. But amazing effects. Zack Snyder directed a beautiful movie. And I was really happy with it. But it did take a long time to reach 200 million domestically in America. And the critics and Access Media made sure we knew that every day until it did reach 200 million. Man of Steel, what's wrong with me today? Man of Steel made a healthy around 600 million in the global box office. And before, Marvel were breaking records for solo films because they cheat and they put other characters in them, which bumps it all up, of course. That was very healthy for an origin movie. Very healthy indeed. And of course, now if you compare it to Marvel origin movies, of course, it's a lot higher. But that doesn't mean 600 million wasn't good. But it should have made more. And again, a DC film suffered because of Access Media, making sure they told people this wasn't a good movie. And I don't understand why people think this isn't a good movie. I just don't get it. I really don't. It staggers me how you can watch that film and say it's rubbish. So let's look at why people may have not liked it. They didn't like the dark tone. They didn't like the 9/11 type of action. Look, I wasn't at 9/11, so I don't know. I didn't see what happened in 9/11. But just because humanity had a terrible crisis, it doesn't mean we can't have epic, realistic explosions. And there was the accusation that Superman wasn't saving anyone, that people must have died in all those buildings collapses. And I'm sure people did die. Maybe that's more realistic that people died. Superman can't save everyone. Now, maybe Superman didn't hold enough buildings up. He did save some people, but ultimately, he saved the whole of humanity. I think people's problem is that they're used to Christopher Reeve saving many, many people, lifting them up. Of course, Henry's Superman saved the soldier falling out the helicopter. Look, he still saves people in that movie. But I think people were just finding anything to hate on this movie. And it's really sad because it's such a great movie. It really is. And I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's one of my favourites for sure. It's brilliant. So already we had toxicity towards a DC film. And then we had Batman v Superman. And I've never seen a hatred for a piece of media, a piece of art in my life, right? Never. I think if you forward maybe 3 years' time with the female Ghostbusters movie, that was really bad, really bad. Some of the stuff those people had to take. I mean, it wasn't a great movie. It wasn't a great idea, was it? I said at the time, why can't we have 2 men and 2 women in that film? I don't get it. But anyway, so there is toxicity out there, and the toxicity towards Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was at fever pitch. And again, we have to ask why. Why were people so angry with this film? Some of it, I'm sure Disney were behind. I think some of it, MCU stands were stirring it up. The unhappy Affleck thing was despicable and so toxic, so toxic. And that GIF is still out there. It's not very nice, but that's the internet. It's unacceptable. I don't accept it, but that's what the internet is. These people, these stands will do anything to hurt DC. And it's interesting, James Gunn, he's just started filming the Suicide Squad movie, and he said, you know, basically, I love Marvel fans, I love DC fans, why can't we all be friends? Well, James, why don't you ask your MCU fans, right? Why can't we be friends? Why are they attacking Man of Steel and Batman v Superman all the time? Why can't they accept that actually Zack Snyder is a really creative, talented man? Why don't you ask your fans? Because you can't be directing it at us. Yes, we slaughter the MCU, and I quite like the franchise. I've got all the films in my cupboard over there. But the point is, and I hate to sound childish, but they did start it. And what they did, going for Batman v Superman in the toxic way that they did, was absolutely disgusting. Now, especially the extended edition, 3 hours long, amazing. This is an amazing film. This really is. It's so many parallels and so many pages have been taken from The Dark Knight Returns. It's freaking amazing. It's an amazing film. It's an amazing story. If you don't like Eisenberger's Lex, that's up to you. I don't think everyone liked Eisenberger's Lex. I think he was given a really good storyline. I wouldn't have cast him as Lex. When I think about Lex, Eisenberg's nothing like him. But Eisenberg's performance was absolutely fantastic. And in the end, you sit there, you're on the internet, and the films that you love are being attacked all the time. And you try and defend them. But how can you? When there's legions, because you know what social media is like. It's an echo chamber. And it becomes really bad. And in the end, they drove Zack Snyder off the franchise. That's what they did. Warner Brothers didn't do it. They did. The stands, the MCU stands, Access Media. They pushed and pushed and pushed till it was impossible for Warner Brothers to allow him to keep on working. Twice they told him to redo his Justice League script. And look where we are now. We're fighting for his cut of Justice League. What do you think, everyone? What do you think about what Zack Snyder achieved with the beginning of the Snyder Cut? How do you feel the DCEU is doing now? And what can we do about this toxicity when you look at what's going on with the Joker movie? This isn't new. This has been happening since Man of Steel. How can we deal with these levels of toxicity, this politicization of movies and movie criticisms? How can we, as fans, take a step back and not be involved with this toxicity?